The great chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered with the glow of thousands of crystalline panels, each pulsing faintly as the assembled species watched the humans rise from their seats. For decades, the Council had believed humanity to be brash yet manageable, a younger race eager for approval. But as silence spread through the chamber, that illusion crumbled. The human delegation stood in silence, eyes calm, expressions unreadable. Then, without another word, they turned and walked out. The sound of their footsteps echoed across the hall like thunder rolling through metal. No one moved. No one dared to breathe. The High Speaker of the Council, a being of ancient authority, attempted to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Across the chamber, species that had once dismissed humans as unpredictable now felt something else entirely, an unfamiliar tremor of fear. For years, the Council had invited humans to the peace talks, attempting to end disputes between the core worlds and the rim colonies. But every proposal seemed to favor the old powers, dismissing the human settlements as secondary participants. Each time the human representatives were told to be patient, to wait their turn, to understand their limited influence. Yet humanity had waited long enough. The talks had lasted for weeks. Each day the Council proposed more restrictions on human trade, more oversight on their colonies, and more guidance from older species. They spoke of stability but acted only to secure their own dominance. The humans had listened, always polite, always restrained. But today, when one of the Council members declared that humanity's military presence was a threat to peace, the lead human stood, folded the treaty papers carefully, and simply said, "We withdraw." Then they left. In that moment, the chamber felt colder than it ever had before. For a brief time, the Council dismissed the event as a diplomatic performance. They told themselves that humans would return soon, seeking to renegotiate. They had always returned before, but this time the humans did not. Weeks passed, then months. Across the stars, human ships vanished from Council space. Trade routes closed. Communication lines fell silent. Even the human ambassadors living among other worlds departed quietly, leaving behind empty offices and messages that said only, "We wish you peace." At first, the Council found the silence convenient. Without the humans' interference, trade agreements passed easily. The bureaucrats rejoiced at the absence of opposition. But soon, small inconveniences began to ripple through the galactic network. Human-built relay stations, once integral to communication across light years, were shut down. The hyperlanes they maintained began to destabilize, causing delays in travel. The Council attempted to send technicians to repair them, only to find the systems locked behind encryption protocols that no one else could break. Then came the loss of materials. Human mining colonies had once supplied rare metals that powered the Council's most advanced technologies. With those shipments gone, production across dozens of systems began to falter. Entire fleets were grounded. Civilian transport halted. Economies weakened. At last, the Council began to understand. Humanity had not simply walked away from the peace talks. They had walked away from the entire galaxy. In desperation, the Council dispatched envoys to the nearest human worlds. None returned. Surveillance drones sent to the edges of human territory were blinded by interference fields. Messages received no replies. Even when fleets approached, the human defense grids activated with precision and silence, warning them to leave. Months turned into a year. And in that year, the galaxy began to change. Without humans, balance crumbled. Old rivalries reignited. Borders flared with conflict. The peace that the Council claimed to maintain fractured under the weight of greed and mistrust. Those who had once criticized humanity for their aggressive nature now unleashed wars of their own. Meanwhile, faint reports began to emerge from the dark edges of space. Stories of massive ships unlike anything ever seen before, of human colonies thriving in isolation, building vast networks beyond the rim, of fleets that no longer bore the flags of the old Earth Alliance but new symbols, simple, silent, and united. The Council dismissed these as rumors. But deep within the archives, the analysts saw the truth forming like a shadow on the horizon. The humans were no longer a scattered species bound by Council laws. They had become something else, a force beyond the old order. On the 3rd anniversary of their withdrawal, the Council held an emergency session. Supplies were dwindling, Wars raged unchecked, and trade between the core and the rim had collapsed entirely. The chamber was filled again, but this time, the seats once reserved for humanity remained empty and dark. The high speaker called for silence. "We must re-establish contact," he said. "Without them, our civilization weakens." But the delegates only exchanged uneasy glances. None dared to volunteer. Finally, one young ambassador spoke. "If we reach out, will they even answer?" The silence that followed carried the weight of guilt. They all remembered how they had treated humanity, with condescension, manipulation, and arrogance. They had mocked their insistence on fairness. They had laughed when humans protested the Council's hypocrisy. They had forgotten the one truth that should have guided them, that humans never forget an insult, nor do they forgive easily when betrayed. Still, they had no choice. A delegation was formed, a fleet of diplomats and escorts, sent across the void toward human space. When the fleet reached the border, they found a structure floating in the darkness. It was not a station, nor a weapon, but something vast, an artificial sphere that glowed softly against the black. It radiated power unlike anything the Council had seen. As they approached, their systems were locked out. Their ships halted mid-space as invisible fields surrounded them. Then a single transmission came through. "This is sovereign territory. State your purpose." The voice was calm, measured, unmistakably human. The Council envoy stammered, "We come to reopen the peace talks. The Council seeks to make amends." Silence followed. Then the voice replied, "You had your chance. You called it peace while binding others in chains. We learned from you, but we no longer need you." The envoy tried to speak again, pleading that the galaxy was falling apart, that only unity could restore balance, but the transmission ended. The human fleet, massive, silent, and gleaming like forged light, emerged from behind the sphere. The Council ships turned back. They were not fired upon. They were simply dismissed, as humans had once been dismissed by them. When they returned to the Council, their report sent waves of unease through every world. Humanity had changed. They had built something far greater than any Council faction could imagine. Their technology was cleaner, faster, and beyond analysis. They no longer relied on trade, on treaties, or on permission. They had become completely self-sufficient. Rumors spread again, of human colonies that flourished on worlds once thought uninhabitable, of terraforming that reshaped barren planets into living ecosystems within months, of fleets moving through regions untouched by any known hyperlane, as though the laws of physics themselves bent for them. The Council tried to keep control, but the fractures widened. More systems broke away, seeking alliances with the humans in secret, but those who reached out found no reply. Humanity remained silent, watching. At last, desperation turned to regret. The Council assembled one final gathering, the largest since the founding of their civilization. The High Speaker stood before the assembly, his voice heavy. "We once thought ourselves guardians of peace, yet peace built on pride cannot last. We treated humanity as lesser, though they sought only respect. We forgot that peace is not the absence of war. It is the presence of trust. And now they are gone." His words echoed through the hall, but there was no applause, no comfort. Only the awareness that they had driven away the one species that had truly believed in cooperation, even after being wronged countless times. Far from the Council's reach, within the expanse of human space, a new civilization thrived. Their ships moved in quiet harmony, their colonies gleamed with light, and their people looked toward the stars not with bitterness, but with resolve. They had learned from the Council's failure. They had built a society where unity came not from dominance but from shared purpose. Every planet contributed to the whole. Every voice mattered. And in their silence they grew stronger. The galaxy soon realized the full cost of their mistake. Without human innovation, the flow of progress slowed. Without human curiosity, exploration faltered. Without human empathy, diplomacy failed. And yet the humans did not return. They simply watched, distant and unyielding. Generations later, when the Council finally sent another envoy, they found no borders, only stars filled with human worlds, vast and radiant. The envoy's final message back to the Council carried a single line before transmission ceased. "They no longer walk among us. They walk beyond us." The Council understood then what they had lost. They had mistaken humanity's patience for weakness, their kindness for naivete, their cooperation for dependence. They had believed they could control the species that had endured their scorn. But when humans walked away, they did not leave in defeat. They left in triumph, taking with them the spirit that had once inspired the galaxy to dream. And as the stars burned brighter over their distant empire, the Council finally faced the truth they had ignored for centuries. The peace they had claimed